Well, good afternoon. My name is Owen Appleton. I was born in Springfield on November 1st, 1909, and I came from a family of industrialists. My grandfather, Julius Appleton, was a paper manufacturer in Holyoke, and he owned the Queen Anne-style house that is up on Maple Street that you've probably seen. It's one of the largest single-family homes in Springfield. I grew up across the street from there. My father, Owen Appleton, was a naval architect. He taught naval architecture at MIT. He then worked for Chapman Valve and for Bosch Machine Tool Company here in Springfield. And I attended the Middlesex School for high school, and I went to Harvard and graduated class of 1932. During my senior year of Harvard, I spent a month in the Soviet Union. I wanted to see for myself what all the talk was about. And what I experienced was interesting. It was not the great utopia that some people would have it be, but it also wasn't hell on earth, like a lot of radicals were saying. So after my graduation, I moved to New York, and I gave some lectures about the Soviet Union. I talked about how the older people in the Soviet Union generally weren't happy about the changes, but that there was great optimism among the younger generations. And I joined a local communist party in New York. I ran for state assemblyman on the communist ticket in 1933. I was also arrested in New York City in 1933 for distributing communist literature. I was handing out flyers that were instructing people to take their money out of the banks, to not trust the banks. But the capitalists did not like that I was telling people to keep their money rather than trusting it to the capitalists who were saying that you should keep it in the bank. But with that being said, I was committed to the communist movement despite my privilege, despite the fact that I had grown up in a very wealthy and very capitalistic family. But I wanted to identify more with the common man, with the working class. And because of that, I enlisted to fight in the Spanish Civil War as an American volunteer. The Spanish Civil War was the result of several years of turmoil in Spain, several years of party changes and styles of government changes. In 1931, Spain overthrew its monarchy and became a constitutional republic. And it enacted a lot of more liberal reforms, including reforms to workplaces, especially rural farm workers. It secularized the schools and the government. A lot of those types of changes that I certainly felt were positive. But then in 1933, the more conservative faction narrowly won the election and began undoing all of those reforms. Even more drastic than how it had been. There was one leader in particular who was advocating for not even just the return of the monarchy, but the complete abolition of any form of democracy and replacing it with an authoritarian government that would return Spain to its former glory. This, of course, I strongly disagreed with and was discouraged to see the ways that the conservatives rolled back all of these worker protections, all of these, the labor union progress and things like that had happened over the span of the early 1930s. So then, to remember the exact facts here, because I want to make sure I tell you the truth and the accurate news. So in 1936, the leftists narrowly won the election and took back control of the government. But by that point, a lot of the conservatives had already been in place and were threatening a coup and were trying to block any efforts to bring back those reforms. One of the leaders of those right-wing nationalists was Jose Calvo Sotelo, and he would speak very persuasively about the need for a strong authoritarian government to instill traditional values and to stop what he described as anarchy. It was not anarchy, it was just normal left-wing politics, but he branded it anarchy and said that they needed the military to stop the anarchy and to put an end to this and have a strong leader who could control the country. He basically wanted a coup, and that inadvertently was what he got, because on July 13th, 1936, he was assassinated. And the right wing used his assassination as a pretext for attempting to take control of the Spanish government, and imprisoning any socialists or labor union leaders, anything like that. That began the Spanish Civil War, and so I soon after enlisted. I joined the Lincoln Battalion, which was a group of American volunteers. I departed for Spain on February 6, 1937, and I arrived 11 days later in Spain. At the time, the Lincoln Battalion was in the midst of the Battle of Jarama. It was a month-long battle that ended up inconclusive, but the Lincoln Battalion took heavy losses. We lost about 120 of our 500 men. Over the course of the spring and summer, we were involved in more engagements. We were involved in the Battle of Brunete and the Zaragoza offensive. Both of those were inconclusive. We suffered more heavy losses. Our battalion was often used as shock troops, so we would be right on the front lines. And we also had very little experience. Our commander was a doctoral student from UC Berkeley who had no prior military experience, but a strong desire to fight against fascism. And so that we were committed to the cause, but morale was low. I was a lieutenant in the battalion, so I was one of the officers. Because of my Harvard education, I was also the clerk, secretary, typist, doing a lot of the clerical work, but I was also fighting on the front lines as well. And unfortunately, that is where I lost my life on October 17th, 1937, while fighting against the fascist nationalists in Spain. I will read the statement that the Springfield branch of the Friends of the American Lincoln Brigade issued after my death. Word of my death arrived here in Springfield about a month later. I am not here, I am in Spain. But this is the statement that the chairman of the Friends of the Brigade wrote. The Springfield branch of the Abraham Lincoln Brigade deeply mourns the death of Owen Appleton, killed in action in Spain while engaged in the struggle against fascist invasion. He was one of the group of volunteers from Springfield whose loyalty to the cause of democracy sent them across the sea to aid the Spanish people in defending their newly won freedom. He believed that if fascism could be stopped in Spain, its threat to world peace would receive a death blow. In giving his life in such a heroic manner, Owen Appleton commands the greatest reverence from all who feel the ideals of democracy and peace are a most precious part of our American heritage. To his family, we express our heartfelt sympathy. Theirs indeed must be the greatest sorrow, but the ideals and work of Owen Appleton have earned him a place in the hearts of millions of his fellow men. They are determined that these ideals shall be carried forward to the day when we shall have a world free forever from the scourge of war and fascism. Thank you for joining me here this afternoon. May you continue to fight the fight against fascism wherever it may occur.